Dr. Hans Gert Pöttering, dear friends, it is 1 year since the inception of a concept of rebellion against the established order, of established truths, to a concept of promoting freedom, liberty and peace and justice through furthering our human contact with one another. And in that context, I want to say that European unification is of itself a problematic that you are facing in Europe. And I think it's interesting to note that the demonstrations that have taken place in the Arab world have to some extent been cloned, both in terms of the demonstrations that we have seen in Wall Street, in London, in Berlin. There seems to be a genuine reaching out to find new truths, and some have put this at the door a year after the beginning of the Arab Revolt, which I would accept to call the Arab Rebellion, for new themes. The workshop theme, of course, the European Union and the Mediterranean, is hugely important. But how can we speak about the Europe in the Mediterranean, which we seek to build? How can we speak of stability when the southern Mediterranean, which my country, Jordan, is geopolitically a part of, when we became a part of the concept of the Mashriq countries, the Eastern Mediterranean countries, we are not a Mediterranean littoral country any more than Portugal is a Mediterranean littoral country. But nevertheless, you recognized us as a Mediterranean reality. The concept that we had at the time of these conversations in the early 70s, when we started speaking about cooperation, included peace, development, and democracy being built on education. And I think one of the reasons for the ongoing rebellion, the ongoing intifada, which has not led to change, because unfortunately the rebellions have been hijacked by traditional schools of thinking. You call them Islamist, fundamentalist, but they are conservative schools of thinking, hijacked by security services. These realities mean that the attempt to bring about a change of understanding continues, but I don't think that it can be holistic without a trilateral understanding. That at the top, at the apex of a triangle, we have the political, executive, judiciary, consultative realities of today and yesterday. If they are to be the realities of tomorrow, how can they humanize and understand real issues without contact with the economic and social side of this triangle, which unfortunately is not mobilized today? What we have seen in this region is $10 to $12 trillion being wasted between Madrid and Oslo, the Madrid conference and the Oslo conference on so-called peace in the Middle East, entirely spent on the purchase of weapons. So it seems to me that although concepts exist, I referred to West Asia and North Africa, which is a concept largely built with our friends in East Asia, and I thank the Nippon Foundation, your colleague organization in Japan, for supporting this concept, because after all, from a Japanese or a Chinese point of view, we're not Middle East, we're Middle West, if anything, talking geography. But the situation in this Asian region, this West Asian region, Turkey, Iran, the Arabs, Israel, cannot continue to be a region and specific countries. We hear about Israel and the Middle East. Israel is not in the Middle East, we are told. Iran and Turkey and the Middle East. So I prefer to refer to West Asia and to refer to this triangle. How can we mobilize, motivate without the participation of political, economic, and social realities? How can we talk about peace as a project that we build together? The situation in the region is comparable in many ways to the Eurasian Rim. In the Eurasian Rim, you have a real process of engagement, the Helsinki process, a process where security issues are not only weapons of mass destruction, basic security issues, the so-called war on terror, which seems to be a war of terror on terror, and the question of human security. What we need is comprehensive security. And as I've mentioned many times in the past, the situation in this region is comparable in some respects to that of post-war Europe. In post-war Europe, a theme was picked up by Monet and Schumann: coal and steel for the European community. After two major wars, the First and the Second World War, I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that more people have been killed from 1945 to the present day in different parts of the world than the total number of those lost in the First and the Second World War. Over 90 million people. And the reason is that whereas you consolidated your perceptions of the future of peace over the nonsense of continuing to fight over Alsace-Lorraine, over neighboring areas in France and Germany, you spoke of coal and steel. We are the major producers of energy. We are water stressed. We suffer from water scarcity, and yet we have not yet been allowed to talk about a regional community of water and energy. May I say that in terms of the theme and the conceptions of the workshop, you ask, what do Arabs think about Germany and Europe? And what do young Europeans think about the Arab countries in the wake of the revolution? I think that as far as Germany is concerned, we have a very special niche. And around me I have, among others, the representative students of two universities, the Arab participants in the German University in Jordan, and indeed the participants in the University for Science and Technology, the Soumaya University. It is my hope that when we look at the polls of young people performed by the Anna Lindh Foundation and Gallup poll, that when looking at the reactions from people of this generation, that we find increasing information, increasing knowledge. We lack a knowledge base in this region. And I would like to say that these polls, which in one instance sampled 13,126 individuals from across 13 countries in the Euro-Mediterranean space, came up with the conclusion that the two shores of the Mediterranean were asked to ask themselves into answering 6 questions on values: obedience, family solidarity, curiosity, independence, respect for the other, and respect for religion. That is not necessarily making religion the motivating factor in the management of a theocratic state. They were asked which values they thought were most important in the education of children and which might be preferred in the southern and eastern countries. The resulting disconnect was in a strange way reassuring. European parents answered that the two most important values for them are family solidarity and respect for other cultures. When asked to comment on the southeastern part of the Mediterranean, they also expected respect for other cultures in the context of a central pillar of their belief: respect for other cultures. I find this reassuring because we live in a world where multiculturalism is suspect, where pluralism is also a bold statement to be made. A world where people are closing in on themselves, hence Islamophobia, hence this continuing feeling of us and the others, not least of all in the context of us and Europe. Do we need a Europe? This is what we glean from the conversations over the future of Europe today. But in the south and the east of the Euro-Mediterranean, the two key values of people from our part of the world were held to be religious beliefs and obedience. When asked about the central values of European parents, independence and curiosity were the values which were chosen. As the report observes, each group seems to have attributed to the other some qualities that were possibly missing in their own group. However, I want to say that the time has come for a universal code of conduct, where we recognize the importance of theology, but we also recognize the importance of practicality, where we proscribe all forms of discrimination. And this is what we are working on in the Arab Thought Forum, the forum that came together in 1980 to present the views of that triangle. Ad personam, in their own right, people in the political sphere, the socio-economic sphere, and the social sphere. In the Arab Thought Forum, we have tried to break down stereotypes. And I would like to show you Paul und die Weltreligionen, Islam, a document that I was happy to present to all the political parties in the German parliament not so long ago. I think the time has come to recognize that my only slight criticism of the workshop theme is that it could have done more to address religion, something Europeans are not always comfortable to talk about. But it's very much a factor of life in the Middle East, as it has been in Europe for so long. Within religion, it may be time to reassess the definition of minority groups. And in that context, based not necessarily on their numerical presence in a society, but on their access to power, privilege, and status within the state apparatus and social institutions. In the seat of Christianity, the old walled city of Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen, there are less than 9,000 Christians today. Over the past few decades, the proportion of Christians in the Middle East as a whole has dropped from 25% to around 5%. So I want to say that in terms of the question of values, is it possible to bear in mind the engagement with Konrad Adenauer, the Arab Thought Forum could take into consideration of revisiting the text, heritage, and history of the other? Your own Friedrich Hohenstaufen in the 12th century visited Jerusalem, where he made it very clear to those at prayer, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, that he would welcome them to visit his part of the world and to pray and observe in exactly the manner they do in their part of the world. This was the 12th century. Today we are still struggling to identify what exactly we understand in the other. It is on that basis that a code of conduct that recognizes the importance of a free flow of information is necessary. It is on that basis that the Declaration of European Muslims in 2006, which can be found online, stipulated the following: European Muslims are fully and unequivocally committed to the following European common values: the rule of law, principles of tolerance, values of democracy and of human rights, human dignity, and, of course, the belief that each and every human being has the right to 5 essential values: the value of life, the value of faith, the value of freedom, the value of property, and the value of dignity. The Arab awakening in this context, of course, is an awakening of the end of the 19th century. What we see today is the continuation of an awakening called for at the end of the Ottoman Empire by all groupings in this Eastern Mediterranean region, in the Balkans, in Greece. People of different backgrounds, ethnic and sectarian, have called for freedom. But today our region is a region of pipelines, not peoples. A region of material interest and material conflicts. And it is for that reason that I think much of the violence that we have seen over the past decade, whether in Iran or in the Gulf or in Bahrain or in Oman or in the Gulf, region as a whole. Libya, of course, is an alternative to the Gulf region. All of this has largely been about oil and not about peoples. I think people are beginning to recognize the importance of the issues that would keep a smile on everyone's face. The returns of the Hajj in 1 year could cover the needs of Somalis and Yemenis and poor people in the whole of this Muslim region. But are we encouraged to give of ourselves? Are we encouraged to build institutions that recognize the importance of human dignity and human worth? Today, everything is suspect. Any form of Islamic investment, even in human dignity, is questionable. And here is the hypocrisy, because in Europe, you have Islamic banking doing very well. In Luxembourg, you have Islamic institutions such as ARMS, ALMS, ladies and gentlemen, not ARMS, ARMS, focusing on the importance of empowering people. I was a member of the Legal Empowerment of the Poor, the commission of that name, which spoke of the importance of making the law work for everyone. But today, of the 4.766 million registered Palestinian refugees, on the United Nations Relief Works Agency records, approximately 1.4 million are living in camps, shackled to the past and to the mental limitations this places on their chances of building lives of hope and dignity. It is in this context that I want to see a regional conversation with you, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, that carries the name of the great Chancellor who was so instrumental in building post-war Germany, on the subject of the uprooted in the region as a whole. Displaced persons, refugees, DPs, displaced persons, internally displaced persons, stateless persons, so that we can exchange information. Tweeting is no substitute for thought, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, generating ideas is easier said than done, but Arab governments have switched their people off, so their people migrated online. The old guard now confronts a new wave, and the two sides think entirely differently and speak at cross purposes. In both the West and the East, we talk about the economy too much and opportunity too little. The empowering of young people around me here, the age of my children and my grandchildren, is so essential to the creation of citizenship in this region. In November 2009, the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation discovered that since 1980, virtually all new job creation in the United States occurred in firms less than 5 years old. Can we not take this to heart? Can we not recognize the importance of the management of water, energy, and the human environment? The Strategic Foresight Group from Mumbai is meeting with us meaning citizens from this region, to discuss the importance of a Rhine Commission, a Danube Commission for the Jordan Valley region. New and no longer ad hoc architectures of relations are necessary, ladies and gentlemen. And I think in that context, only supranational mechanisms that are above sticky fingers, above corruption, and above ideologues, above the monopoly of the truth, are essential if we are going to address the trans-border challenges of a carrying capacity of water, human resources, and economic resources. When Al Gore received the prize for global warming, I had the privilege of receiving the prize from West Asia for human warning. Why are the two mutually exclusive, or should they be mutually exclusive? The creation of a supranational body like the commissions I mentioned is essential to begin to look at the West Asian region, not only in terms of oil pumps in the Gulf, but in terms of oil and its hinterland, peoples. Today, investment goes from the Gulf to North Africa, to Greece, to Central Asia, but why is it not coming to the fertile, or is it the futile crescent? It is in this context, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to work with you in developing a better understanding of the problems of youth and citizenship, wherever they may be. And it is in this context that I believe the time has come to work not only on producing more blue helmets, sometimes after the event, to police worsening security situations, but to produce more blue overalls, as we have said many times in the past, to produce international civil servants of all disciplines who can serve in creating a new international non-denominational peace corps to make our rebellion, the rebellion of Arab youth, a part of the mainstream rebellion of those who do not accept the continuing inequities of our time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.